Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. I can't sleep through my alarm anymore. That probably sounds like a small thing, but it's one of those habits that stayed with me after everything. Before I moved into that building, I used to hit snooze 3 or 4 times. I'd lie there half awake, listening to traffic outside, letting the morning leak slowly into my room. Now the second my alarm goes off, I'm sitting up. Because for a while, someone in my apartment building knew my routine better than I did. My name is Claire. I was 24 when this happened, living in Columbus, Ohio. I'd just gotten my first real job as a receptionist at a dental office, nothing glamorous, but it paid enough for me to finally move out of my older sister's place and get my own apartment. The building was old, but not creepy old, more like cheap rent old. Thin carpet in the hallways, beige walls, brass elevator buttons that stuck when it rained. The lobby always smelled faintly like dust and laundry detergent. Most of the tenants were quiet. Nurses, students, older people who kept to themselves. My apartment was on the 5th floor, unit 514. The neighbor next to me in 516 was a man named Mr. Weller. I didn't know his first name at first. He looked maybe late 50s, thin, always wearing button-up shirts tucked into dark pants. His hair was gray but neatly combed, and he had this polite way of smiling that never reached his eyes. The first time I met him, I was carrying 2 grocery bags and struggling with my keys. He opened his door just enough to look out and said, "You're the new girl." Not new tenant, not new neighbor, the new girl. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Yeah, I'm Claire." "I know," he said. I thought he meant from the mailbox downstairs. My name was taped inside the little slot, so I didn't think much of it. For the first couple weeks, everything was normal. I went to work, came home tired, made cheap pasta, watched shows on my laptop, called my sister, slept. It was boring in the way I'd been craving. I liked hearing my own footsteps in my own apartment. I liked locking my own door. Then I started noticing the timing. Every morning, I left my apartment at 7:42. Not exactly because I planned it. That was just how my mornings worked out. Alarm at 6:50. Shower, coffee, makeup, keys, door. And every morning, as I waited for the elevator, I'd hear Mr. Weller's lock turn. Not right away. 2 minutes later. His door would open at 7:44. He'd step out, holding a little black lunch bag, and smile like it was a coincidence. "Morning, Claire." "Morning." At first, I barely noticed. People have schedules. Maybe you work nearby. Maybe his routine just lined up with mine. But then it happened in the evenings too. If I came home at 5:18, his door would open at 5:20. If I came home late, like 8:03 after dinner with my sister, his door would open at 8:05. Always 2 minutes. Never 1. Never 5. 2. I told myself it was nothing. I actually felt embarrassed for even thinking it was weird. Living alone made me jumpy. That's what I told myself. Then he started saying things he shouldn't have known. One Wednesday, I stopped at a pharmacy after work to buy cold medicine and a box of chamomile tea. When I got back, Mr. Weller stepped into the hallway while I was unlocking my door. "Hope that tea helps," he said. I froze with my key halfway in the lock. I looked down at my grocery bag. It was plastic, but not see-through. The tea box was at the bottom. I gave this tiny nervous laugh and said, "Oh, thanks." He smiled. "Chamomile is good for nerves." I went inside and locked the door. Then the chain. Then I stood there listening. Nothing. A few days later, my mom called while I was cooking. We had a small argument. Nothing dramatic, just one of those conversations where your parent makes you feel like you're still 15. I cried afterward quietly, standing barefoot in my kitchen with the stove off and my dinner going cold. The next morning, Mr. Weller was waiting near the elevator. He didn't come out 2 minutes after me that time. He was already there. He looked at me and said softly, "Rough night." My stomach tightened. "What?" He tilted his head. "You looked upset yesterday." I hadn't seen him yesterday. I said, "I'm fine," and stepped into the elevator. He stepped in with me. The doors closed. For 5 floors, neither of us said anything. I could feel him looking at me from the corner, but I kept my eyes on the changing numbers. When we reached the lobby, he said, "You should call your mother back. She worries." I walked out so fast I almost tripped. At work, I told my coworker Dana. She was in her 30s, very practical, the kind of person who could make anything sound manageable. "Could be thin walls," she said. "He knew about the tea. Maybe he saw you carrying it." He knew I cried. Dana paused at that. Then she said, "Tell your landlord. At least get it documented." So I did. The landlord, a man named Rick who always sounded like he was eating while talking, told me Mr. Weller had lived there for 11 years and never caused trouble. "Some older guys are just nosy," Rick said. "Keep your blinds closed. Let me know if he actually threatens you." Actually threatens me. That phrase stuck in my head, because people wait for things to become obvious before they take them seriously. A hand on a doorknob, a broken lock, someone standing over your bed. But fear usually starts quieter than that. It started for me with paper. I found the first note on a Monday morning, tucked under my door. It said, "Blue sweater today." That was all. 2 words. I was wearing my blue sweater. I stared at the note for a long time, my coffee cooling on the counter. The handwriting was neat, almost pretty. I opened my door and looked into the hallway. Empty. Mr. Weller's door was shut. I changed clothes. I wore a black cardigan instead. I even felt stupid doing it, like I was letting some creep control me. When I got home that evening, there was another note under my door. Better. I called my sister. She came over that night with her boyfriend, Jason. He checked my closets, under my bed, behind the shower curtain. He looked annoyed in that protective way guys get when they want a problem to be simple. He knocked on Mr. Weller's door. No answer, but I knew he was inside. I could feel it. After that, my sister begged me to stay with her, at least for a few nights. I said no because I didn't want to be dramatic. Also, if I'm being honest, I didn't want to admit I was scared of my own hallway. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Mr. Weller stopped coming out after me. No notes. No comments. Nothing. And somehow that was worse. I started checking the peephole before leaving. I'd stand there with my purse over my shoulder, watching the fisheye view of the hallway until my legs got tired. I changed my schedule. I left 10 minutes early, then 15 minutes late. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, but the feeling never left. The street outside looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. The turning point happened because of a broken elevator button. That Friday, I came home around 9:30. It was raining hard, the kind that turns headlights blurry and makes everything smell like wet concrete. I was exhausted, carrying takeout and trying not to drop my keys. The elevator doors opened, and inside, the panel was loose. Not broken exactly, just pulled slightly away from the wall, like someone had tried to pry it open. I almost ignored it. Then I saw paper behind it, a corner of white paper, folded and taped flat against the inside of the panel. I don't know why I touched it. I wish I hadn't. I pulled the loose panel just enough to slide the paper out. It was a handwritten list. My name was at the top. Claire, daily routine. Under that, hour by hour, were details of my life. 6:50 alarm. 7:13, shower stops. 7:29, coffee. 7:42, exits apartment. 7:44, observation begins. 8:06, bus stop. 8:31, work arrival. 12:12, lunch, usually alone. 5:18, returns. 6:03, calls sister. 9:40, checks hallway before bed. 11:16, light off. My hand started shaking so badly the paper made a soft rattling sound. Then I noticed there were notes in the margins. Practicing walk. Voice needs work. Hair color close. Crying response believable. Do not approach yet. I read that last line 3 times. Do not approach yet. The elevator doors slid shut behind me. My heart sank into my stomach as the doors clicked closed, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I hit the lobby button. Nothing happened. Then the elevator started going up. Not down, up, past the 5th floor, to the 6th. The 6th floor was half vacant. I knew that because Rick had mentioned renovations. When the doors opened, the hallway lights were dim, and the carpet had been pulled up in strips. At the far end of the hall stood Mr. Weller. Beside him was a young woman. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. She was about my height, same build, same dark hair, though hers looked freshly dyed and a little too flat. She wore a blue sweater. My blue sweater. Not literally mine, but close enough that my skin went cold. Mr. Weller looked disappointed, like I'd walked in on a lesson too early. The woman stared at me with wide, nervous eyes. Then she smiled, and it was my smile. Not exactly, but practiced. Mr. Weller said, "You weren't supposed to find that." I backed into the elevator, slapping the close button. He didn't run. That made it worse. He just said calmly, "She's almost ready." The doors closed. I hit every button. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely press them. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The elevator dropped to the 5th floor, and I ran. I fumbled my keys twice before getting inside. I locked the door, shoved my couch in front of it, and called 911. While I was whispering my address to the dispatcher, someone knocked. Not hard, just 3 soft taps. Then my own voice came from the hallway. "Claire, open the door." I stopped breathing. It came again. My voice, softer this time. "Please, I'm scared." I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The dispatcher kept asking me questions. I crawled backward into my kitchen, clutching the phone with both hands. Then Mr. Weller's voice said, "That's very good." Again, but less desperate. The woman outside repeated, "Claire, open the door." That was when I broke. I started crying so hard I could barely speak. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. I stayed on the kitchen floor with a knife in one hand and my phone in the other. By the time police arrived, the hallway was empty. Mr. Weller was gone. So was the woman. But inside apartment 516, they found enough to make the officers stop treating me like a nervous girl with an overactive imagination. There were printed photos of me entering and leaving the building. Notes about my clothes, my voice, my posture. Receipts from stores I shopped at. A wig on a stand. Makeup. Copies of my mail. And on one wall, taped carefully in rows, were schedules. Not just mine. Other women. Past tenants. Some names crossed out. Some labeled failed. Mine had one word written beside it. Current. They never found Mr. Weller. The woman either. Police told me they were persons of interest, which sounded too small for what they were. I moved out 2 days later. For months, I stayed with my sister. I changed my phone number. I quit my job because I couldn't handle the bus stop anymore. I stopped wearing blue. I stopped posting online. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't know. Even now, years later, I still check behind me when I leave my apartment. Not because I think Mr. Weller is there, because sometimes I wonder if she is. The woman who was learning me. The woman who knew how I walked, how I smiled, how I sounded when I was scared. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's realizing someone didn't just want to hurt you. They wanted to erase you. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Story 2. The first thing you need to understand is that she didn't look dangerous. That's probably why I listened to her for as long as I did. She was old, small, polite, and always dressed like she was about to go to church. Gray cardigan, pearl earrings, soft white hair pinned back neatly. She had this gentle smile that never quite changed, even when she said things that made the blood drain out of my face. My name is Daniel. I was 19 when this happened, during my first year at college in Pittsburgh. I didn't have much money, and my parents couldn't help much, so instead of living on campus, I rented the cheapest room I could find in an old converted building about 15 minutes from school. It wasn't really an apartment. It was more like a boarding house pretending to be apartments. Thin walls, shared laundry in the basement, a hallway that always smelled like dust, old carpet, and someone's microwaved soup. The building had 4 floors, no real security, and an elevator that groaned like it hated being alive. But it was cheap. And at 19, cheap feels like freedom. My room was on the 3rd floor, 3B. Directly across from me was 3A. That was where Mrs. Heller lived. I met her the first night I moved in. I was carrying a box of clothes down the hallway around midnight because my friend Chris had helped me move after his shift ended. I remember laughing about something, trying to keep my voice down, when the door across from mine opened. Slowly, Mrs. Heller stood there in the narrow crack of light, smiling. "You're the new boy," she said. I smiled back because what else do you do? "Yeah, Daniel. Sorry if we're being loud." "Oh no," she said. "I don't sleep much." That was the first time she said something like that. I thought she meant she had insomnia. Normal old person stuff. I didn't think anything of it. For the first couple of weeks, she was just this strange but harmless part of the building. No matter when I came home, she was there. If I came back from class at 6 p.m., her door was cracked open. If I came back from the library at 1 a.m., she was standing there. If I came home from a late diner run at 3:30 in the morning, half asleep and holding a greasy paper bag, she was there too, smiling politely like she'd been waiting for me. "Long night?" she'd ask. "Yeah," I'd say. "Be careful, Daniel." Always that. "Be careful, Daniel." At first, I thought it was sweet. A lonely old woman watching out for the broke college kid across the hall. I even brought her groceries once when I saw her struggling with a bag of cans. She thanked me and touched my wrist with cold fingers. "You're a good boy," she said. "Good boys should listen." That sentence stuck with me, but I still laughed it off. The first warning came on a rainy Thursday night. I had been at the library until almost midnight, finishing a paper I had put off for way too long. When I got back to the building, I was soaked, tired, and annoyed because the elevator had one of those out-of-service papers taped to it. So I headed for the stairs. When I reached the 3rd floor landing, Mrs. Heller's door opened before I even put my key in my lock. "Daniel," she said. I turned, wiping rain off my face. "Hey, Mrs. Heller." She didn't smile that time. "Don't take the stairs tonight." I stared at her. I already did. Her expression didn't change. "Not again," she said. I gave this awkward little laugh. "Okay. Elevator's broken, though. Then stay in your room." The hallway was quiet except for water dripping off my jacket onto the floor. I remember feeling that small, uncomfortable pressure you get when a conversation suddenly stops being normal. "Is something going on?" I asked. She looked past me toward the stairwell door. Some people wait where the lights are weak. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the stairwell made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. It was faint. One step, then another. Slow, heavy, coming up. Mrs. Heller lifted one finger to her lips. I unlocked my door so fast I dropped my keys twice. I got inside, locked it, and stood there holding my breath. A few seconds later, someone passed my door. I didn't see them. I only saw the shadow move under the gap. The next morning, I checked the stairwell. One of the lights between the 2nd and 3rd floor had been smashed. There was glass on the steps and a dark smear on the railing. I told myself it was probably a drunk tenant. Maybe Mrs. Heller had heard someone messing around and warned me. That explanation made sense. So I kept it. The second warning came about a week later. I was in my room around 10 p.m., eating noodles out of the pot because I didn't own enough dishes yet. My phone started ringing. Unknown number. I was about to answer when I heard 3 soft knocks on my door. I opened it just a crack. Mrs. Heller stood there with her hands folded in front of her. "Don't answer your phone tonight," she said. I looked down at the screen. Still ringing. "Why?" She smiled again, but it was thin, forced. "Because some voices are better left outside." The phone stopped, then immediately started ringing again. Same unknown number. I looked at her, waiting for her to explain, but she just turned and went back into 3A. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, I got a voicemail. At first, it was just breathing. Then a man's voice whispered my full name. Daniel Mercer. Not Dan. Not Danny. My full name. Then he said, "Come down to the basement. You left something here." I hadn't been in the basement that day. I locked my door, pushed my desk chair under the handle, and didn't sleep until sunrise. The next morning, I told the landlord, a tired guy named Mr. Voss, who always smelled like cigarettes and coffee. He shrugged and said old buildings attract weird people. "You sure it wasn't one of your friends messing with you?" "No," I said. "They used my full name." He rubbed his face. "Your name's on the mailbox downstairs." That shut me up. Again, there was an explanation. Not a good one, but enough of one. After that, I started relying on Mrs. Heller more than I wanted to admit. If she was standing at her door, I felt safer. If she warned me, I listened. And that's the part that still bothers me. How easily fear can make obedience feel like trust. A month passed. My life became this weird routine of classes, work-study, cheap food, and Mrs. Heller's quiet warnings. "Don't use the laundry tonight." That night, someone flooded the basement. "Don't leave your window open." I found scratch marks on the outside sill the next morning, even though I was on the 3rd floor near the fire escape. "Don't talk to the man in the red hat." The next day, a man in a red knit cap stood outside the building entrance for almost an hour, pretending to smoke while watching everyone come and go. Every time, she was right. Every time, I felt grateful. Then Chris came over. Chris was my best friend from high school. He was loud, funny, and the kind of guy who didn't believe in being scared of anything unless it had teeth and was actively chasing him. I told him about Mrs. Heller, expecting him to take it seriously. He laughed. "Bro, she's messing with you. She knew about the guy in the red hat. Or she saw him before you did. She knew about the phone call. Maybe she made the phone call." I remember getting irritated. "That's stupid. She's like 80. Chris looked across the hall at her door. Old doesn't mean harmless. That night, around 11:40, Chris went downstairs to grab snacks from his car. 5 minutes later, Mrs. Heller knocked on my door. Her face looked pale. "Don't let your friend in," she said. I stared at her. "What? Don't let him in when he comes back." I actually laughed because it was so ridiculous. "That's my best friend." "No," she said softly. "Not tonight." My phone buzzed. A text from Chris. "Open up, forgot my key." Then a knock came from down the hall. Not at my door. At the main hallway door near the stairwell. "Daniel." Chris called. "Dude, let me in." I walked toward it, but Mrs. Heller grabbed my sleeve. Her grip was stronger than it should have been. "Don't." I pulled away. "You're scaring me." "Good," she said. Something about the way she said that made me stop. Chris knocked again. "Daniel, quit playing." His voice sounded normal. Annoyed. Familiar. But then my phone buzzed again. A second text from Chris. "Yo, I'm still outside. Some old lady is watching me from the 3rd floor window." My body went cold. I looked at the hallway door. The knocking stopped. Chris's voice came again, closer now, almost pressed against the other side. "Come on, man." I backed away. Mrs. Heller smiled. "Good boy," she whispered. The real Chris came back 10 minutes later with 2 bags of chips and a terrified look on his face. He said a woman had been standing at a 3rd floor window, staring down at him from my side of the building. I asked him what she looked like. He said, old, white hair, smiling. My heart sank into my stomach. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Chris. Around 4 a.m., we heard movement across the hall. Not footsteps, more like furniture being dragged very slowly over the floor. Chris whispered, "We're leaving tomorrow." I nodded. The next morning, I went to the landlord and told him I wanted out. I didn't care about the deposit. I didn't care about the lease. Mr. Voss frowned when I mentioned Mrs. Heller. "Who?" "The woman in 3A. He stared at me for a second too long. 3A is storage. I honestly thought he was joking. He took me upstairs himself and unlocked the door across from mine. It wasn't an apartment. It was a storage room. Dusty furniture, paint cans, rolled up carpet, old boxes stacked against the wall. No bed, no kitchen, no pearl earrings, no old woman. But there was a chair near the door, and on the floor beside it were dozens of small folded notes. Every note had my name on it. Don't take the stairs tonight. Don't answer your phone. Don't let your friend in. Don't leave your window open. Don't trust Chris. Don't move out. The last one was written over and over, harder each time, until the paper tore. Mr. Voss called the police. They searched the room and found more than notes. They found a cheap prepaid phone, a red knit cap, a small tool used to break window latches, and a little notebook filled with times. My times. When I left for class, when I came home, when I showered, when I ordered food, when I called my mom, and at the very bottom of one page, in shaky handwriting, it said, "He listens better when afraid." The police never found Mrs. Heller. They found out there had been a woman named Evelyn Heller who lived in that building years before, but she had moved out long before I got there. Nobody knew where she went. Nobody knew who had been using 3A. The landlord swore the room was always locked. But locks don't mean much when someone has time. I moved out that same day. Chris and his older brother helped me throw everything into trash bags and boxes. I didn't even fold my clothes. I just wanted out. As we carried the last box down, I looked back at the third-floor hallway. 3A was closed. My door was open, and for 1 second, reflected in the dark glass of the hallway window, I saw her standing behind me. Gray cardigan, pearl earrings, soft white hair, smiling politely. When I turned around, she wasn't there. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen in that reflection. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. It's been 4 years. I live in a normal apartment now. New building, cameras, key fobs, bright hallways. I know my neighbors, but not too well. I don't tell strangers my schedule. I don't ignore small things anymore. And I never trust someone just because they warn me. That's what people forget. A warning can feel like kindness, but sometimes it's just a leash. Sometimes the person telling you where not to step is the same person placing traps in the dark. So if you ever move into an old building, and someone across the hall always seems to know what's about to happen, don't be grateful too quickly. Ask yourself how they know, and if they smile at you in the middle of the night and say they don't sleep much, believe them, then get out. Story 3. Have you ever heard someone whisper something about you from inside your own house? Not your name in a dream, not the TV left on in another room. I mean a real voice, low and patient, saying something only someone watching you could know. The first thing it said was, "Kitchen light is on." That doesn't sound scary by itself. Honestly, at the time, I almost laughed. But that was before it said, "Back door unlocked." Before it said, "She's awake." Before I understood the voice wasn't coming from a baby monitor next door. It was coming from inside our walls. My name is Ryan. I was 31 when this happened. My wife, Claire, was 29. We had been married for just under 2 years, and we had recently bought our first house in a quiet suburb outside Louisville, Kentucky. It was the kind of neighborhood people describe as safe without thinking too hard about what that means. 2-car driveways, trimmed lawns, porch flags, kids' bikes left near garage doors. At night, the loudest thing you heard was someone's air conditioner clicking on. The house wasn't fancy, but to us, it felt like winning the lottery. 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, a finished basement, and a kitchen with ugly yellow tiles Claire swore would make the place one day. We didn't have kids. We weren't planning on it yet. That detail matters because of what we found in the hallway closet during our second week there. It was an old baby monitor. Not one of those camera ones. Just a small white plastic receiver with a speaker, an antenna, and a yellowed volume knob. It was sitting in a cardboard box with old outlet covers, screws, and a broken flashlight the previous owners must have left behind. Claire held it up and laughed. Creepy. I said, vintage parenting. She almost threw it away, but for some reason I kept it. I don't even know why. Maybe because we were broke from the move and everything felt like something we might need later. I put it on a shelf in the laundry room and forgot about it. For a few days, life was normal. Boring even. I went to work at an insurance office. Claire worked from home doing billing for a dental clinic. We unpacked boxes at night, ordered too much takeout, and argued gently over where the couch should go. Our closest neighbor was a man named Dennis, who lived alone in the blue house to our left. He was maybe in his late 50s, thin, polite, always wearing the same beige windbreaker even when it was warm. He introduced himself the first Saturday we were there and brought over a banana bread wrapped in foil. Previous family had 2 kids, he said, looking past me into the house. Place sounds different now. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just thanked him. Claire thought he was harmless. He's lonely, she said after we left. I agreed because that was easier than admitting something about him made me uncomfortable. The first whisper happened on a Tuesday night. We were watching TV in the living room when we heard static from the laundry room. Claire muted the TV. What was that? I got up and followed the sound. The old baby monitor was on. I know I hadn't plugged it in. I know that sounds impossible, but when I walked into the laundry room, the little red power light was glowing and soft static was breathing through the speaker. Then a voice whispered, "Kitchen light is on." It was a man's voice. Flat. Quiet. Close. I froze. Claire came up behind me. "Ryan." The voice didn't come again. I checked the kitchen. The light was on. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper from that dusty little speaker made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Claire said, "It's probably picking up someone's monitor nearby." That made sense. Old monitors used radio signals. Maybe a neighbor still had one. Maybe some device was crossing frequencies. So I unplugged it. The red light went off. We joked about it for the rest of the night, but I noticed Claire checked the kitchen curtains twice before bed. The next night, it happened again. Static. Then the voice said, "Back door unlocked." This time, the monitor was still unplugged. It sat there on the shelf, dark and dead-looking, whispering through its speaker. I walked to the back door. Unlocked. Claire stood in the hallway with her arms folded tight across her chest. "You forgot to lock it," she said. "Maybe, but I hadn't. I remembered locking it because the deadbolt stuck, and I had to pull the door toward me to make it turn. Still, we explained it away. Houses settle. People forget. Old electronics do strange things. That's what adults do when something scares them. They bury it under practical words." Then the voice started getting specific. A few nights later, Claire fell asleep on the couch while I was in the basement sorting tools. The monitor crackled from the laundry room above me. Then the voice whispered, "She's awake." I climbed the stairs so fast I hit my shoulder on the doorframe. Claire was sitting upright on the couch, staring toward the dark kitchen. "What?" I asked. She whispered. Someone said my name. I checked every door, every window. Nothing was open. Nothing was broken. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. The next morning, I asked Dennis if he ever picked up weird signals from old electronics. He was trimming a small bush near his porch. He stopped clipping when I said baby monitor. For just a second, his face changed. Then he smiled. "Old houses," he said. "They keep sounds." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh with me. That weekend, Claire wanted to throw the monitor away. I agreed. I took it out to the trash can in the garage, dropped it inside, and made sure it landed under a bag of kitchen garbage. At 2:13 that morning, we woke to static. Not from the laundry room. From our bedroom closet. Claire grabbed my arm, so hard her nails dug into my skin. The voice whispered. He threw it away. Neither of us moved. Then it said, "Bring it back." My heart sank into my stomach as the bedroom door clicked shut behind the draft, and I realized I was completely alone in my own home. Someone was watching, and I had no way out of being seen. I got up, grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside the dresser, and opened the closet. The monitor was there, sitting on the floor, clean, dry, the red light glowing. Claire started crying. I called the police. The two officers who came were polite, but I could tell they didn't know what to do with us. I showed them the monitor. I told them it had been in the trash. I told them someone had to have been inside. They checked the doors, windows, garage, basement. No signs of forced entry. One officer asked if we had cameras. We didn't yet. He suggested getting some and said, "Could be a prank. Could be someone nearby with another transmitter." Claire said, "It said what we were doing." The officer looked at the monitor like it was a dead insect. "Technology can be weird," he said. That was all we got. We bought cameras the next day. Front door, back door, garage, living room, kitchen. I changed the locks and installed longer screws in the striped plates like every home safety video tells you to do. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Then on the 4th night, while Claire was brushing her teeth, the monitor crackled from the kitchen counter. It said, "Cameras don't see walls." I was standing right beside it when it spoke. I knocked it off the counter. Claire came running out of the bathroom with toothpaste still on her mouth. What did it say? I didn't answer. I just started tearing the kitchen apart. Drawers, cabinets, vents, under the sink, behind the refrigerator. Nothing. Then I heard Claire scream from the hallway. I ran to her. She was staring at the wall near the guest bedroom. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw it. A tiny round hole in the baseboard, perfectly drilled, no bigger than the head of a nail. I got down on my knees. Behind the hole, something reflected light. Glass. Or plastic. A lens. I don't remember exactly what sound I made. I just remember punching the wall with the butt of the bat until the drywall cracked. Inside the wall was a small camera wrapped in black tape. And beside it, attached to a wooden stud, was an old baby monitor transmitter. Not the receiver we had found. The other half. Claire backed away with her hands over her mouth. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Before I could dial, the monitor on the kitchen floor whispered, "Don't call." Then from somewhere outside, a dog started barking. Our back door handle moved. Slowly. Once. Then again. I grabbed Claire and pulled her into the laundry room because it had a door to the garage. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the car keys twice. Behind us, the kitchen floor creaked. Someone was inside. Claire whispered, "Ryan." I put my finger to my lips, but I was terrified. Not brave. Not calm. Just terrified and trying not to fall apart. We slipped into the garage. I hit the opener. The garage door groaned upward, loud enough to wake the whole block. As it rose, I saw Dennis standing in the driveway. He was wearing his beige windbreaker. In one hand, he held a small black radio. He looked at us like we had embarrassed him. "Claire," he said softly, "you're not supposed to leave when the house is upset." She made this broken little sound behind me. I stepped in front of her with the bat. Dennis tilted his head. "I've been here longer than you," he said. "Longer than the last family. Longer than anyone. I know when lights are left on. I know when doors are unlocked. I know when people are lonely." I said, "Get away from us." He smiled then. Not big, not wild, just calm. "I was practicing," he said. "Families take practice." That sentence did something to me. It made him feel less like a weird neighbor and more like an empty room pretending to be a person. A porch light came on across the street. Then another. Dennis noticed too. His expression changed. I pulled Claire toward the car, but Dennis stepped forward, raising the radio like he wanted to say something into it. Before he could, our neighbor across the street, Mrs. Alvarez, shouted, "I called 911. Dennis looked at her house, then back at us. For 1 second, our eyes met. Even after escaping, even with the safety of police lights not yet behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I saw in that driveway. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Then he walked back to his house. Not ran. Walked. The police found him in his basement 10 minutes later. I won't describe everything they found because some of it still makes me sick. But there were monitors, recorders, old baby monitor parts, labeled tapes, photos of our kitchen, our bedroom hallway, our living room, the previous family's kids, and people who lived in the house before them. He had drilled through the shared side of his property years earlier, using narrow channels through exterior walls, attic space, and old utility openings. Some of the equipment had been there long before we moved in. He had been listening to that house for years. Different families, different voices, same walls. When police asked why, Dennis said he didn't want to be alone. The news made it sound simple. Creepy neighbor arrested. Hidden cameras found. Couple escaped suburban nightmare. But it wasn't simple living through it. Claire and I sold the house after the investigation. We lost money. I didn't care. I could not sleep in that place again. Every click in the wall felt like a voice forming. Every vent sounded like breathing. It has been 4 years now. We live in an apartment on the 3rd floor of a busy building, and I still check smoke detectors, outlets, vents, and baseboards when we move into any new place. Claire still sleeps with a white noise machine, not because it helps her relax, but because silence makes her listen too hard. Sometimes the scariest thing about a house is not what's buried under it. It's what's been invited to listen. So if you move somewhere new and find an old baby monitor, throw it away. But before you do, check the walls. And if a voice ever whispers something only someone inside your home should know, don't explain it away. Don't wait for it to get worse. Get out. Because people like that don't need a reason. They just need a quiet house, a patient ear, and enough time to convince themselves they belong with you. Story 4. The thing I remember most is how polite he sounded through the door. Not angry, not panicked, not even nervous, just calm. "Claire," he said, almost gently, "open up. I brought help." And for a second, even after everything I had figured out, even after finding what I found in his apartment, part of me still wanted to believe him. That's what scares me the most when I think about it now. Not the lockpicks, not the photos, not the suitcase he had packed with my clothes. It's the fact that my first instinct was still to trust him. My name is Claire. I was 26 when this happened, and I had just moved into my first apartment alone in Portland, Oregon. Before that, I'd always lived with roommates, boyfriends, or family. So getting my own place felt like some huge adult milestone, even though the apartment itself wasn't impressive. It was a 4th floor 1-bedroom in an older brick building with noisy pipes, narrow hallways, and an elevator that worked only when it felt like it. My unit was 4B. Across the hall was 4C. That was where Martin lived. He introduced himself on my first day while I was dragging boxes from the elevator. He was maybe in his late 40s, tall, soft-spoken, with silver hair and round glasses. He wore cardigans and clean sneakers and had this harmless, teacher-like way about him. He held the elevator for me, carried 2 boxes without being asked, and told me which washing machine in the basement didn't steal quarters. "You'll like it here," he said. "Quiet building. People mostly keep to themselves." At the time, that sounded perfect. I had moved there after a bad breakup. Nothing dramatic, just one of those relationships where you slowly realize you've become smaller around someone else. I wanted silence. I wanted routine. I wanted to come home from work, make tea, watch boring shows, and not explain myself to anybody. Martin seemed like exactly the kind of neighbor you'd hope for. He waved when he saw me. He warned me when packages were left downstairs. He once left a note under my door saying the city was street cleaning the next morning, so I moved my car and avoided a ticket. Everyone in the building liked him. Mrs. Alvarez from 3A called him the gentleman upstairs. The property manager said Martin had lived there for 9 years and helped with small repairs when maintenance was slow. The first thing he fixed for me was my kitchen sink. I came home from work one rainy Tuesday and found water leaking from the cabinet underneath. Not flooding, just dripping steadily into a little puddle. I was standing there with my sleeves rolled up, trying to understand what I was looking at when Martin knocked. "Everything okay?" he asked. I laughed awkwardly. My sink is apparently trying to ruin my life. He looked past me, concerned. I heard water. Want me to take a quick look? I should have asked how he heard water from across the hall. But I was tired, and he had a toolkit already in his hand. That detail didn't bother me until later. He fixed it in 10 minutes. Tightened something, wiped the cabinet dry, told me to leave a bowl underneath overnight, just in case. You saved me, I said. He smiled, happy to help. After that, small things started happening. Helpful things. One morning, I opened my door and found an umbrella leaning against the wall with a sticky note on it. Looks like rain today. Keep dry. Foresee. It did rain that afternoon. Another time, I got sick with a fever and called out of work. Around noon, there was a bag outside my door with soup, crackers, ginger ale, and cold medicine. I hadn't told Martin I was sick. When I asked him about it later, he said he heard me coughing through the wall. That sounded possible. The walls were thin. I could hear the man below me sneezing sometimes. I could hear toilets flush. I could hear the elevator cable groan like an old ship. So I told myself it was nothing. That became the pattern. Something would go wrong, and Martin would appear with the solution. My Wi-Fi stopped working, and he knocked 15 minutes later with the number for a better provider. My bedroom window jammed open, and he happened to have the exact tool to fix it. My porch light outside the door burned out, and before I submitted a maintenance request, it was replaced. I mentioned to a coworker that I felt lucky. She said, "Girl, I wish I had a neighbor like that." And that was how everyone treated it. Lucky, sweet, old-fashioned. Nobody understood why it slowly started making my skin crawl. The first moment that really bothered me happened in the laundry room. It was around 10:30 at night, and I was folding towels on the table while my last load dried. The basement smelled like detergent, dust, and hot metal. The overhead lights buzzed constantly. Martin came in carrying an empty basket. "Late laundry night?" he said. I smiled politely. Only time I could get a machine. He nodded, then looked down at one of my towels. "You switched detergent." I stopped folding. "What?" "The lavender one made you sneeze," he said. "This one's better." He said it casually, like we were talking about weather. I hadn't told him that. I hadn't told anyone in the building that. I just stared at him, and after a second, he seemed to realize he'd said too much. "The scent," he added. I noticed the scent changed. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway above us made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The whole building suddenly felt too small, like there were no private spaces left. I left my laundry half folded and went upstairs. That night, I put a chair under my doorknob. The next morning, the chair was exactly where I left it, and I felt stupid. That's the thing about people like Martin. They don't scare you all at once. They make you doubt each individual feeling until the whole picture becomes impossible to ignore. A week later, I lost my keys. I searched everywhere. Purse, coat pockets, bathroom counter, under the couch. I was already late for work, close to tears, when Martin opened his door. "Everything all right?" "I can't find my keys." He frowned sympathetically. "Check the freezer." I actually laughed. "The freezer? I've done it before." Tired brain. I almost didn't look, but when I opened my freezer, my keys were sitting beside a bag of frozen peas. My blood went cold. I had no memory of putting them there. Martin smiled from the hallway. "See? Easy fix." I called my sister Amanda that night and told her the whole thing. She listened quietly, then said, "Claire, I don't like that." "Neither do I. Can you stay with me? I don't want to overreact." She sighed. "You always say that right before something is obviously bad." She was right, but moving out wasn't simple. I had a lease. I had bills. And there was still no proof. Just a nice neighbor being too helpful. So I bought a cheap indoor camera and placed it on my bookshelf facing the front door. For 2 days, nothing happened. On the third day, I came home and the camera was facing the wall. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I didn't touch anything. I called Amanda. Then I called the property manager. He came upstairs, annoyed more than concerned, and checked the door. No sign of forced entry, he said. Someone moved my camera. Are you sure it didn't fall? It's not on the floor. It's turned around. He gave me that careful look people give women when they think fear has made them unreasonable. I can change the lock, he said, but maintenance, myself, and emergency staff still need access. What about Martin? He blinked. Martin doesn't have a key. That should have comforted me. It didn't. That night, I pushed my dresser against the door and slept with a kitchen knife on the floor beside my bed. I barely slept at all. The next morning, there was a note under my door. You seemed nervous yesterday. I'm here if you need anything. No signature. He didn't need one. I started avoiding him. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. I waited at my peephole until the hall was empty. I stopped using the laundry room at night. I had groceries delivered to my sister's house instead of mine. For a while, the favors stopped. Then the emergencies got worse. My car wouldn't start one morning. Martin was in the parking lot before I even popped the hood. He offered me a ride to work. I refused and called a tow truck. The mechanic later told me someone had disconnected the battery cable. Cleanly, deliberately. 2 days later, my apartment smelled faintly of gas when I got home. I called emergency maintenance from the sidewalk. The gas line behind my stove had been loosened. The property manager started taking me seriously after that, but only halfway. He asked if I had an ex who might be bothering me. I said no. He asked if I was sure. That question made me so angry I almost cried. The police came and took a report. They spoke to Martin. He told them he'd noticed the gas smell too, and had been about to call it in. He was calm, helpful, concerned. The officer told me, "He seems like he's looking out for you." I remember staring at him and thinking, that's exactly the problem. The turning point came on a Thursday night. Amanda had finally convinced me to stay with her for a few days. I packed a bag, called a rideshare, and waited by the door with my coat on. Just as the car arrived, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Don't leave yet. Hallway isn't safe." I didn't move. A second message came through. "Look through the peephole." I did. The hallway was empty. Then the light above Martin's door flickered. Once. Twice. His door was cracked open about an inch. I should have left right then. I know that. Instead, I opened my door quietly, stepped into the hall, and looked toward 4C. From inside his apartment, I heard my own voice. Not in my head. From a speaker. It was a recording of me talking to Amanda on the phone. "He knows things he shouldn't know," my voice said. "I don't feel safe here." I couldn't breathe. Martin's door opened wider by itself, just from the draft maybe, and I saw inside. Photos covered the wall. Pictures of me carrying groceries. Me sleeping on my couch, taken from above somehow, through an angle I still don't understand. Me standing at my bathroom mirror. Me in the laundry room. Me walking from my car. There were notes beside them. Sink. Umbrella. Fever. Keys. Car. Gas. And at the bottom, written in red marker, "Final favor. Help her start over." I backed away so fast I hit the opposite wall. Then Martin stepped out of the stairwell behind me. Not from his apartment. Behind me, he was wearing gloves. In one hand, he held a small black bag. "Claire," he said softly, "you weren't supposed to see that yet." I ran to my door, but my hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for them. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Martin didn't rush. That was the worst part. He walked toward me like a man approaching a frightened animal. "I was helping," he said. "You were lonely. You were overwhelmed. You needed someone." "No," I said. My voice came out weak. He tilted his head. "Everyone needs someone." I finally got the key into the lock, shoved my door open, and slammed it behind me. The dresser was still nearby from the night before. I pushed it as hard as I could until it blocked the door. Martin knocked once. Then again. "Claire," he said. "Open up. I brought help." My phone had no signal. I don't know how. It always had signal in that apartment. I ran to the window and screamed down to the street. The rideshare driver was still there, looking up from his car. "Call 911. I shouted. "Please." Behind me, the lock turned. Not the knob. The deadbolt. Slowly. He had a key. I grabbed the camera from the bookshelf and threw it at the door as hard as I could. It hit just as the door opened against the dresser, leaving a gap only a few inches wide. Martin's face appeared in that gap. Calm. Sad. Almost disappointed. "You're making this harder," he whispered. I screamed until my throat burned. That saved me. The rideshare driver called 911. So did a neighbor from 5A. Martin left before police reached the 4th floor, but he didn't get far. They found him in the basement storage area, trying to pry open the back exit. In his black bag were zip ties, sedatives, my spare ID, my passport, a copy of my lease, and a printed resignation letter to my job. There was also a suitcase in his apartment. My clothes were inside, folded neatly. The police later found tiny cameras in my smoke detector, bathroom vent, and one inside a fake phone charger plugged behind my couch. They found copied keys to 3 apartments. They found recordings of several tenants, but I was the one he had chosen. Martin told detectives I was falling apart, and that he was going to help me disappear before the world hurt me. That was his word. Help. Even after escaping, even with the safety of police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the gap in the door. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. It has been 2 years now. I don't live alone anymore. I check vents. I cover cameras. I don't accept favors from neighbors unless I ask first. And when someone is too available, too observant, too perfectly kind, I pay attention. People always warn you about strangers who look dangerous. They don't warn you about the friendly man across the hall, the one who carries your boxes, the one who fixes the leak, the one who knows exactly what you need before you say it. Sometimes kindness is just kindness, but sometimes it's a hook, and by the time you notice the line tightening, everyone around you is already telling you how lucky you are. Story 5. Have you ever been accused of doing something in your sleep? I don't mean snoring or talking or kicking the blankets around. I mean something specific, something detailed, something that makes people look at you differently even when you know, with every part of yourself, that you didn't do it. My name is Daniel. I was 31 when this happened, living in a small apartment building in Columbus, Ohio. Nothing special. 3 floors, brown brick, coin laundry in the basement, mailboxes that never closed properly, and hallways that always smelled faintly like old carpet and someone's dinner. I lived alone in apartment 3C. At the time, I worked IT support for a local insurance company. My life was quiet in the most boring way possible. I got home around 6:30, microwaved whatever meal I had the energy for, watched YouTube on my couch, then went to bed before midnight. I wasn't a party guy. I didn't have people over. I didn't play loud music. I didn't even own a proper speaker. My idea of a wild night was falling asleep with the TV still on. That's why the first complaint confused me. It was a Friday morning. I had just opened my apartment door to leave for work when I found a note taped to it. "Please stop dragging furniture at night. Some of us have to sleep." No name. Just that. I remember staring at it, half awake, holding my travel mug, thinking it had to be meant for someone else. I hadn't dragged furniture. I didn't even move my dining chair without picking it up because the floor scratched so easily. I took the note down and went to work. That evening, as I was checking my mailbox, a woman stepped out of apartment 2C, directly below mine. She was probably in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. Short gray blonde hair, very pale skin, and these sharp, tired eyes that made it feel like she was always in the middle of judging something. "You got my note?" she asked. I turned around. "That was you?" "Yes. I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong apartment." I wasn't moving furniture. She looked up at me like I was lying badly. It was above my bedroom, back and forth, for nearly an hour. I gave an awkward laugh. I was asleep. That's what they all say. That line stuck with me, but at the time I just thought she was one of those neighbors who hated noise. Every building has one. I said, "I'll be more careful, but I really don't think it was me." She didn't answer. She just went back into her apartment and closed the door. For a few days, nothing happened. Then came the second note. This one was under my door. "Stop whispering after midnight." I read it 3 times. Whispering? I lived alone. I hadn't called anyone that night. I hadn't even watched TV in bed. I went to sleep around 11 because I had a headache. I told myself it was nothing. Old building, thin walls. Sounds travel strangely. Maybe someone beside her was making noise, and it sounded like it came from above. But then the complaints started becoming more specific. "You walked in circles at 2:15, she told me one morning in the stairwell. Another time, "You dropped something heavy at 3:40. Then, you stood over the vent and talked." That one made me stop. "What?" "You stood near the bedroom vent," she said, and whispered down into it. I actually felt embarrassed, even though I hadn't done anything. That's the weird power of being accused. Part of you starts trying to defend yourself against things that never happened. "I didn't," I said. "I don't know what you're hearing, but it's not me." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Maybe you should record yourself sleeping." She walked away before I could respond. That night, I lay in bed listening. The building made its usual sounds. Pipes knocking, a car passing outside, a soft thud somewhere below. Nothing strange. Still, I couldn't sleep. Every time I shifted under the blanket, I wondered if she heard it. Every creak of my mattress felt loud. I started holding my breath without realizing it, like I was trying to prove to an invisible judge that I was innocent. The next morning, there was no note. I felt stupid for being relieved. About a week later, things got worse. The landlord called me while I was at work. His name was Rick, and he was the kind of guy who always sounded annoyed that maintenance existed. "Daniel, I've had multiple noise complaints from the tenant below you," he said. "Rick, I'm telling you, I'm asleep when she says this is happening. She says it's every night. It's not. She also said she heard voices." I closed my eyes at my desk. Voices? "Look, I don't want drama. Just keep it down." That was it. No investigation. No questions. Just keep it down. After that, I started going to bed anxious. It's hard to explain what it does to your mind when someone tells you things are happening in your apartment while you're asleep. I started wondering if maybe I was sleepwalking. I'd never done it before, but how would I know? I'd wake up and check if anything had moved. Chairs, shoes, cups, my keys on the counter. Everything always looked normal. Then one Saturday morning, I found my living room chair pulled out from the table. Just slightly, maybe 2 feet. I stared at it for a long time. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the quiet of the apartment made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I remembered pushing it in the night before. I was sure of it, but being sure starts to feel fragile when you're alone. Your brain begins attacking itself. Did I push it in? Did I get up for water? Did I move it and forget? That evening, I bought a cheap indoor security camera. Nothing fancy, just one of those small cameras that records motion and sends alerts to your phone. I placed it on my bookshelf facing the living room and part of the bedroom doorway. My plan was simple: catch nothing, prove nothing was happening, and maybe show Rick if the complaints kept coming. For 2 nights, the camera caught only me. Me walking in after work, me eating on the couch, me going to bed, darkness, a few clips of headlights moving across the ceiling. Then on the 3rd night, at 2:12 a.m., the camera recorded motion. I woke up that morning to 6 alerts on my phone. My stomach tightened before I even opened them. The first clip showed my living room in black and white night vision. The room was still. My bedroom doorway was dark. Then my front door slowly opened. I stopped breathing. A figure stepped inside. At first, I thought it was me. That was the strange part. My half-asleep brain tried to make it normal. Sleepwalking, I thought. There it is. That's the answer. But then the person turned slightly toward the camera. It was the woman from downstairs. She was wearing a long dark robe and slippers. Her hair was flat on one side, like she had been lying down. In her right hand, she held a key. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind her, and I realized I had been asleep just a few feet away while someone walked into my apartment like she belonged there. The next clip showed her dragging my dining chair across the floor. Slowly, deliberately, not enough to make a huge noise, but enough for the legs to scrape. Then she stopped and looked toward my bedroom. She whispered something. The camera didn't catch the words clearly. The third clip showed her walking in a slow circle around my living room. One hand trailed along the wall. She stopped at the vent near the floor, crouched, and whispered into it. Then she stood and listened, like she was waiting for herself to hear it from downstairs. I watched the rest with my hands shaking. In the last clip, she walked to my bedroom doorway. She stood there for almost 5 minutes, just standing, looking in at me while I slept. I didn't move on the recording. I had no idea she was there. Even through the grainy footage, I could see her face. Calm, empty, interested, not angry, not scared, just watching to see if I would wake up. I don't know how long I sat on the edge of my bed after watching that. I remember my phone feeling slippery in my hand. I remember the apartment sounding too quiet, like every wall had suddenly leaned closer. Then someone knocked on my door. 3 soft knocks. I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't answer. Another knock. Then her voice from the hallway. Daniel. The way she said my name made my skin tighten. Soft. Almost kind. I know you're awake. I backed away from the door. My hands were trembling as I called 911. I spoke in a whisper, which sounds ridiculous now, but I was afraid she would hear me. I told the dispatcher my downstairs neighbor had entered my apartment at night and was now at my door. The dispatcher asked if she was still there. Before I could answer, something slid under my door. A folded piece of paper. I stared at it from across the room. Then I heard her say, "You shouldn't have recorded me." That sentence did something to me. It made everything real in a way the video somehow hadn't. She knew. I told the dispatcher. She knows I have footage. The dispatcher told me to stay inside, lock myself in a room if I could, and wait for officers. But then my doorknob turned. Slowly. Once to the left, then to the right. I had locked the deadbolt, thank God. But I watched the knob move like it was alive, and all I could think was that she had already opened that door before. The knocking stopped. For a second, there was silence. Then I heard footsteps walking away down the hall. I should have stayed put. I know that, but fear makes you make bad choices. I crept to the peephole. The hallway looked empty. I opened the folded paper with shaking fingers. It said, "You sleep deeply." That was when I started crying. Quietly, almost angrily. Not because of the words alone, but because they were true. She had been inside my home, beside my bed, and I slept through it. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. 2 officers came up, watched the footage, then went downstairs to talk to her. I stayed in my apartment with the door open, one officer beside me, feeling exposed and stupid in my own living room. They brought her out about 20 minutes later. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't fighting. She looked calm, almost sleepy. When she passed my door, she turned her head and looked straight at me. Even after seeing the police lights flashing through the stairwell window, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying her face on that camera. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. One officer told me later that she had a copy of the building's master key. They found it in her robe pocket. They also found a notebook in her apartment. Rick had shown her the apartment months earlier when it was vacant, before I moved in. She had worked in property management years ago, and somehow she had gotten access to a spare key ring during a maintenance visit. Or that was the theory. Nobody could prove exactly how she copied it. The notebook was worse than the key. She had written down every complaint she made about me. Dates, times, descriptions. But on the next pages, she had written what she actually did. Dragged chair at 212. Whispered near vent. Stood at bedroom door. Subject did not wake. Subject reacts more strongly when accused in person. That word still makes me sick. Subject. like I wasn't a person, like I was some experiment she was running from downstairs. The police told me she claimed she was documenting disturbances. She said I was making noise, and she only entered my apartment to understand the pattern. But the footage made that hard to believe. She was arrested, but not for long. Illegal entry, harassment, and a few other charges. I don't know all the details. I didn't want to know. People always assume there's some satisfying ending where the person goes away forever, and everyone agrees you were right. Real life doesn't always give you that. Rick changed my locks and apologized in the lazy way landlords apologize when they're worried about being sued. I moved out 2 weeks later anyway. I couldn't sleep there again. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her standing in the doorway, measuring how deeply I breathed. For months after that, I slept with a chair under the doorknob, even in my new place. I bought better cameras. I checked closets. I checked under the bed like a kid, except I was a grown man with rent and a full-time job. I also stopped dismissing small things. That's what I want people to understand. The first note felt silly. The second felt annoying. The complaints felt like a misunderstanding. And that's how things like this survive. They hide inside normal life. A weird neighbor, thin walls, a landlord who doesn't want drama, a little discomfort you talk yourself out of because you don't want to seem paranoid. But sometimes your gut is catching details your mind hasn't organized yet. Sometimes the scariest person in the building isn't the one making noise. It's the one listening for it. It's been 4 years now. I still live alone, but I don't sleep the same way. I wake up to every sound, a floorboard, a pipe, a soft knock from somewhere in the building. And whenever a neighbor complains about noise, I take it seriously. Not because they might be right, because they might be standing inside your apartment at night, making it themselves, and waiting beside your bed to see if you wake up. Story 6. Have you ever moved somewhere and felt like the neighborhood accepted you a little too easily? That sounds strange, I know. Most people worry about the opposite. Bad neighbors, loud music, cars getting broken into, someone letting their dog bark all night. But when my wife and I moved into that house, everything felt almost too peaceful, too still, like the whole street was holding its breath, waiting to see how long we would last. My name is Daniel. I was 36 when this happened, living with my wife, Megan, and our 7-year-old daughter, Lily. This was in a quiet suburb outside Pittsburgh, one of those neighborhoods with old maple trees, cracked sidewalks, and houses that looked like they had all been built for the same family in different decades. We moved there because we were tired. That's the simplest way to explain it. Megan had been working night shifts at the hospital. I was doing freelance accounting from home, which sounds comfortable until you realize you never really leave work. Lily had just finished first grade, and we wanted her to have a yard. A real one. Somewhere she could ride her bike in circles and chalk flowers onto the driveway. The house was nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, a small front porch, a basement that smelled like old cardboard, and wallpaper in the dining room that looked like it had survived several bad decisions. But it was ours. The only strange thing was the house next door. It was empty. At least, that's what the real estate agent told us. The place sat close to ours, not attached exactly, but close enough that if both side windows were open, you could probably have a conversation without raising your voice. It had pale yellow siding, a sagging porch, and an upstairs window that faced Lily's room. Our agent, Karen, noticed me looking at it on moving day and said, "Don't worry about that place. Nobody's lived there in years." "Why not?" I asked. She shrugged in that cheerful real estate way, like even bad news could be staged nicely. "Owner passed away. Family lives out of state. It's tied up in paperwork." That should have been the end of it. For the first few days, it was, we unpacked. We ordered pizza. We argued about where the bookshelf should go. Lily made friends with a little boy 3 houses down. Megan fell asleep on the couch with a paint roller still in her hand. It felt normal, safe, even boring. Then, on our 5th night, I saw the blue light. I was standing in the kitchen around midnight, drinking water straight from the glass because I'd woken up with my throat dry. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming and the soft creak old houses make when they settle. Through the kitchen window, I could see the empty house next door. One upstairs window was glowing blue. Not bright, not like a lamp. More like TV light. That soft, pulsing blue that changes every few seconds. I stood there for a while watching. Then a shadow crossed behind the curtain. Slowly, like someone walking past a screen. I didn't move. I just held the glass in my hand while cold water dripped onto my fingers. The next morning I told Megan. She frowned and looked out the window while pouring Lily cereal. Maybe a security light, she said. It was upstairs, behind the curtains. Could have been headlights reflecting. At midnight, she gave me a tired smile. Dan, you just moved. You're stressed. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but that night, when I checked again, the blue light was there. Same window, same soft flicker. And after about 10 minutes, the shadow appeared again. This time, it stopped behind the curtain, facing our house. I called Karen the next day. She sounded distracted, like she was driving. No, she said. There's definitely nobody living there. Could the family be checking on it? Not that I know of. I saw a light. She paused. Daniel, that house doesn't have active electricity. That sentence stayed with me all day. That house doesn't have active electricity. A few mornings later, our mail started disappearing. At first it was little things. A catalog Megan ordered. A utility notice I expected but never got. Then a birthday card from my mother for Lily, which upset me more than it probably should have. I went outside and checked our mailbox twice. Empty. Then I looked at the mailbox next door. The little metal door was hanging slightly open. Inside were 3 envelopes, all addressed to us. My name, Megan's name, our correct house number, but placed neatly in the empty house's mailbox. I stood there on the sidewalk, holding them, feeling this strange embarrassment, like I'd caught someone doing something private, even though they had stolen from me. That evening, I walked over and knocked on the empty house's front door. The porch boards bent under my weight. The paint around the doorframe was cracked. There was a dead wasp on the welcome mat, even though there was no welcome mat when we moved in. I knocked again. Nothing. Then from inside I heard a soft bump. Not loud, just enough, like someone had shifted their weight on an old floorboard. I stepped back. Hello? I called. No answer. I told myself it was a raccoon, or pipes, or the house settling. People do that. They build little explanations like sandbags against panic. The next week, Lily came into our bedroom at 2:13 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I looked at my phone. She was standing beside my bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit, whispering, "Daddy, the TV house is watching me." I sat up too fast. "What?" "The blue room," she said. "There's somebody in it." Megan woke up and pulled Lily into bed, asking if she had a bad dream. Lily shook her head. "He waved," she said. I went to her room and looked out. The blue light was on, and behind the curtain, I saw the shape of a person standing completely still. My heart sank into my stomach as the bedroom door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and my daughter's room was facing straight into their window. I called the non-emergency police line that night. 2 officers came about 20 minutes later. They walked around the property with flashlights, knocked on the front and back doors, checked the windows from outside. They didn't enter because, as one of them explained, you can't just break into a vacant property because of a light. I told them about the electricity. The older officer looked at the upstairs window, which by then was dark. "Could be kids," he said. "Could be someone using a battery lantern. We'll make a note." A note. That was all anyone ever seemed able to make. 2 days later, our family photo appeared in the empty house's front window. It was a picture we'd taken the previous fall at a pumpkin patch. Me, Megan, and Lily standing in front of hay bales. We kept it in a frame on the bookshelf in our living room. Well, we had. I noticed the empty spot first. Then I saw it across the yard, propped against the inside of the neighboring window, facing outward like a display. I didn't tell Megan right away. I walked across the lawn in my socks without thinking, stood in front of the glass, and stared at our smiling faces behind that dirty window. Behind the photo, in the dark room, something moved. I backed away so fast I nearly fell. That was when things stopped being weird and became something else. Megan wanted to leave that night. She packed Lily's backpack and called her sister. I told her to go. I wanted them out of the house before I did anything stupid. After they left, I sat in the living room with every light on, holding a baseball bat across my knees like some suburban idiot in a home invasion movie. Around 11:40, I heard something inside the wall. Not outside, inside. A soft dragging sound, then a scrape, then a whisper of movement behind the built-in cabinet in the dining room. I stood up slowly. The house was silent except for that sound. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I moved toward the dining room, my hands trembling so badly the bat knocked against the doorframe. The built-in cabinet was one of the features Megan loved when we bought the place. Old wood, glass doors, little drawers underneath. We had stored extra candles, board games, and some picture frames inside. One drawer was open. I knew I hadn't opened it. I pulled the cabinet away from the wall. It was heavy, and I remember the awful screech it made against the floor. Behind it was a narrow panel of drywall, freshly cut, not all the way open, just enough to make a seam. I touched it, and it shifted inward. Cold air breathed through the gap. That's the only way I can describe it, like the wall exhaled. I pushed. The panel opened into darkness. At first, I thought it was some kind of crawl space. Old houses have strange spaces, dead areas, service gaps, places for plumbing or wiring. Then my flashlight caught the edge of a shoebox. One of Lily's shoeboxes, pink with stickers on the lid. It had been in her closet. I stepped back and nearly dropped the flashlight. Then I heard a sound from inside the wall. A man breathing. Slow. Close. I ran. I'm not proud of how I reacted. I didn't investigate. I didn't shout. I didn't act brave. I ran out the front door barefoot and called 911 from the middle of the street. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled with my phone. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. When the police arrived, they found the passage. It ran between our house and the empty one through an old utility space nobody had mentioned during the sale. A narrow, filthy gap behind the walls, just wide enough for someone thin to move through sideways. And someone had been using it for weeks, maybe longer. They found our missing mail stacked in the empty house's kitchen. Megan's scarf hanging on a chair. Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator. My coffee mug sitting beside the sink. They found clothes from our laundry basket folded into drawers upstairs. They found family photos arranged on the mantle, like the house belonged to us, or like someone was trying to prove it did. The worst part was the upstairs room with the blue light. There was no TV, just a small battery-powered lamp covered with blue plastic placed near the window. Beside it was a chair, facing Lily's room. The man wasn't there when they searched. They never found him. The owner's family claimed they knew nothing. Karen cried when she heard what happened and said the inspection never showed any shared wall access. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe not. I stopped caring. We moved out before the end of the month. For a while, Lily wouldn't sleep near windows. Megan couldn't stand closed cabinets. I still notice wall sounds in every house I enter. Pipes. Settling wood. Mice. Doesn't matter. My body reacts before my brain can explain it. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the shape I'd seen behind that upstairs curtain. The calm, patient shadow that didn't rush because it thought it had time. That's what scares me most now. Not that someone broke in, not that someone watched us, but that he was slowly moving our lives next door, piece by piece, until one day maybe we would have looked around and wondered where home really was. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's how quietly it was happening before we noticed. So if you move into a new place and something feels off, don't let people talk you out of your own instincts. Check the windows, check the mail, check the walls, because empty houses are not always empty. And sometimes the person watching you is already closer than next door. Story 7. Have you ever met someone so sweet that you felt guilty for being afraid of them? That's the part one still struggle to explain. Because when I tell people about Mrs. Alder, they picture some creepy old woman with wild eyes and a house full of dead plants. But she wasn't like that. She was gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of neighbor who remembered your birthday after hearing it once. The kind who brought over lemon cake wrapped in foil and asked if you were eating enough. That was what made it worse. My name is Claire. I was 23 when this happened, and I had just moved into a small rental house in Ohio, about 40 minutes outside Columbus. It was my first real place after college. Not an apartment, not a bedroom in someone else's house. Mine. It was tiny with peeling blue paint, old windows that rattled when the wind picked up, and a kitchen floor that sloped just enough to make every chair wobble. But I loved it. I worked as a receptionist at a dental office during the day, and most nights I came home exhausted, microwaved something cheap, called my mom, and fell asleep with the TV still on. It was ordinary, safe, almost boring. Next door lived Mrs. Alder. She had a neat little white house with green shutters and the most beautiful garden I had ever seen. Tulips, roses, lavender, marigolds, all arranged in perfect little sections like someone had measured the dirt with a ruler. Every morning, she was outside watering them in a wide-brimmed straw hat, smiling at anyone who passed. The first time she brought me tea, I thought I had won the neighbor lottery. "You're alone here, aren't you?" she asked, standing in my kitchen doorway with a tray in her hands. I laughed a little because it caught me off guard. "Yeah, just me. No boyfriend? No. Family nearby? Not really. My mom's about 2 hours away." She nodded slowly, like she was filing the information somewhere important. "You should be careful, dear. Young women alone attract attention." I remember thinking it was an odd thing to say, but not threatening. More like something a grandmother would say after watching too much local news. For the first few weeks, she was just part of the neighborhood routine. I'd leave for work around 7:30, and she'd be kneeling in the garden. I'd come home around 5:15, and she'd wave from her porch. Sometimes she'd ask about my day. Sometimes she'd ask things that felt a little too personal. "Do you keep a spare key outside? Does your mother call every night? Do you have security cameras?" I always answered politely but vaguely. I didn't want to be rude. The first thing that felt truly off happened around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for water. My house was dark except for the little orange glow from the stove clock. While I stood by the sink, I noticed movement through the window above it. Mrs. Alder was in her garden. At 2 in the morning, she was wearing a long gray coat over her nightgown, carefully digging with a small hand shovel. There was a lantern beside her, casting this soft yellow circle over the dirt. She moved slowly, calmly, like this was the most normal thing in the world. At first, I told myself she was just eccentric. Some people garden early. Maybe she couldn't sleep. But then she stopped digging. Her head turned, and she looked directly at my kitchen window. I stepped back so fast I bumped into the counter. The next morning, there was a fresh patch of soil near her rose bushes, darker than the rest, recently turned. I tried to laugh it off at work. "My neighbor gardens at night," I told my coworker. Megan raised an eyebrow. "That's not gardening. That's burying." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She didn't laugh back. After that, I started noticing the new patches. Not every night. Maybe twice a week. Sometimes near the fence. Sometimes under the lavender. Sometimes beside the bird bath. Every morning after I saw her outside at night, a new section of soil appeared, neat and flat, like a little wound covered over. Then came the missing bracelet. It wasn't expensive, but it mattered to me. A thin silver bracelet my dad gave me before he passed away. I wore it almost every day, and when I didn't, I kept it in a little ceramic dish on my dresser. One Friday morning, it was gone. I searched everywhere. Under the bed, in the bathroom, laundry basket, kitchen counter. I even checked the trash. Nothing. That afternoon, Mrs. Alder came by with a jar of homemade jam. "You look tired, dear," she said. "I lost something." "Oh," her eyes lifted. "My bracelet. Silver one. I'm sure it'll turn up." She smiled, but it felt delayed, like she had to remember what a normal smile looked like. "Things always turn up," she said, "usually where they belong." That sentence stayed with me all day. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 1:40 a.m., I heard the soft scrape of metal against dirt. I already knew what it was. I moved quietly to the kitchen window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see. Mrs. Alder was outside again, digging. This time, she wasn't alone. There was a man standing at the edge of her garden near the back fence. I couldn't see his face clearly, just his outline under the porch light. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie, hands in his pockets. Mrs. Alder said something to him. He shook his head. She pointed toward my house. My stomach tightened. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. I stepped away from the window and checked my front door. Locked. Back door. Locked. Then I went room to room, turning on lights like that would somehow make the fear less real. The next morning, there was another new patch in the garden, and near the edge of it, half covered by soil, I saw something black and rectangular. A phone, not buried deep, just barely hidden. I told myself to leave it alone. I really did, but curiosity is dangerous when it feels like proof. When Mrs. Alder's car was gone later that afternoon, I went outside, pretending to check my mailbox. Then I crossed into her yard. My heart was beating so hard it felt ridiculous. Her garden looked even prettier up close. Bright flowers, clean stepping stones, little ceramic birds tucked between the stems. But beneath one patch of lavender, I saw the corner of something plastic. I knelt down and brushed away the soil. It was an ID card, not hers. A man named Eric Wallace, 31. The photo was scratched, but his face was clear enough. I didn't know him. Beside it, half buried, was a ring, then a set of keys, then a broken phone with a cracked screen. My hands went cold. This wasn't some harmless old woman burying trinkets. This was evidence. I stood too quickly and stumbled back. That's when her back door opened. Mrs. Alder stood there in her cardigan, holding a mug of tea. "Looking for something, Claire?" I froze. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I forced a laugh. It came out thin and terrible. "I'm sorry. I thought my cat came over here." "You don't have a cat," she said. The silence after that felt endless. I backed away slowly. "Right. Sorry. I'm just tired." She smiled. "Come have tea." "No, thank you." "Claire." The way she said my name made me stop. "You found something that doesn't belong to you." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked quickly back to my house, trying not to run. The moment I got inside, I locked the door and called Megan. She told me to call the police. So I did. The officer who came out was polite, but clearly skeptical. I explained the night digging, the objects, the ID card. He walked over to Mrs. Alder's house, spoke to her for maybe 10 minutes, then came back with a softer expression. "She says she collects lost items from around the neighborhood," he told me. "Keeps them in the garden temporarily because she forgets to bring them inside." "In the dirt?" I asked. He sighed. "I understand it's strange, but unless something is reported stolen, there isn't much I can do." I felt stupid. Worse, I felt watched. That night, Mrs. Alder left a small envelope on my porch. Inside was a photograph of my bracelet. Not the bracelet itself, just a photo. It was lying on dark soil beside a row of white flowers. On the back, she had written, "Some girls should learn when to stop digging." My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously, mostly because of the note. They told me to stay inside and lock everything. An officer said they'd send someone out. While I waited, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message said, "Tell them you lied." Another buzz. "Tell them before I plant something worse." I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys to my car. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I didn't wait for the police. I grabbed my purse and ran out the front door. Mrs. Alder was standing in her garden, just standing there. The porch light behind her made her look small and harmless, but her face was calm. Too calm. "Leaving," she called. I didn't answer. I got in my car, locked the doors, and reversed so fast I nearly hit the curb. As I pulled away, I saw something in my rearview mirror that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. Mrs. Alder bent down beside the newest patch of soil and brushed her hand over it gently, like she was tucking someone into bed. I stayed at Megan's apartment that night. The police searched Mrs. Alder's garden the next day. They found my bracelet. They also found phones, wallets, keys, jewelry, and IDs belonging to more than a dozen people. At first, everyone thought the same thing I had thought, that the garden was hiding victims. But the truth was different, and somehow worse. Mrs. Alder had been framing people. She would steal personal items, plant them where crimes had happened, then make anonymous calls. A stolen wallet in someone's car, a phone near a broken window, a ring left in a house after a burglary. Small things that made innocent people look connected to things they hadn't done. Some had lost jobs. One man had been arrested. A woman had moved away after everyone in town thought she was dangerous. Mrs. Alder had done it quietly for years. Not for money, not for revenge. When the detective explained it to me, he looked tired. She liked control, he said. She liked watching what happened after. Mrs. Alder disappeared before they could arrest her. Her house was empty by sunrise. No clothes in the closet, no medication, no family photos, just clean counters, dead flowers in the sink, and a kettle still warm on the stove. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen across that garden. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. It's been 3 years now. I don't live in that house anymore. I don't accept food from neighbors. I don't answer personal questions from people I barely know. And if something goes missing, I don't assume I misplaced it. That's what scares me most. Not that Mrs. Alder hated me. I don't think she did. I think she liked me. I think she was testing how easily she could place my life in the dirt and cover it with flowers. Sometimes the scariest people don't break into your house. They wave from next door. They bring tea. They ask if you live alone. And while you're busy thinking they're sweet, they're already deciding where to bury your name. Story 8. Have you ever moved into a place and felt like it was already occupied? Not because of furniture, not because of old smells or boxes left in a closet. I mean the kind of feeling where every room is empty, but the silence has weight to it, like someone is holding their breath with you. My name is Adam. I was 28 when this happened. At the time, I lived in Cleveland and worked as a night auditor at a small hotel near the airport. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for me to finally get out of my brother's basement and into my own apartment. The place I found was cheap. Too cheap, probably. But when you're broke and tired of folding your clothes next to a water heater, cheap starts looking like freedom. It was a one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of an old brick building. 6 units total. Narrow hallways. Radiators that clanked at night. The lobby always smelled like old carpet and fried onions from someone's kitchen downstairs. The landlord, Mr. Bell, seemed rushed when he showed it to me. He kept checking his phone and saying things like, "Good bones," and "quiet tenants," and "you won't have any trouble here." The apartment itself was plain but fine. Small living room, tiny kitchen, bedroom facing the alley, one bathroom with yellow tile. Nothing special. Then I noticed the front door. There were scratches around the lock, but not outside. Inside, deep marks in the paint and wood, like someone had stood inside the apartment and tried to claw their way out. I asked Mr. Bell about it. He glanced at the door, then looked away. Previous tenant was unstable, he said. Had some issues. Nothing to worry about. I wanted to ask more, but he was already handing me the lease. That was my first mistake. I signed it. My next-door neighbor was a man named Victor. He lived in apartment 2B, right beside mine. He was probably in his late 40s, with slick-back hair, pale skin, and the kind of polite smile that never really changed. He introduced himself the day I moved in. "You're in 2A?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded slowly, like he already knew. "Good. Nice unit." He helped me carry up a box of dishes without me asking. That should have been nice, and it was technical. But the entire time, he kept glancing toward my hallway. At one point, he said, "You hear anything at night, don't panic." I stopped with the box in my arms. "What do you mean?" "Pipes," he said quickly. "Old building. They knock." Then he smiled. The last guy didn't handle it well. The first few nights were normal. I worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., so my schedule was backward. I slept during the day, ate dinner at breakfast time, and came home while most people were getting ready for work. My apartment felt safe in that boring way apartments do when you're too busy to notice details. I bought a used couch, put my TV on a milk crate, made instant noodles in the kitchen, and felt weirdly proud because it was my kitchen. Then about a week after moving in, I heard the first knock. It was around 3:15 in the morning on my night off. I was lying on the couch, half asleep, watching some old crime documentary. 3 knocks came from the wall behind my TV. Knock, knock, knock. Not loud, not frantic, just deliberate. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. I stood up and walked to the wall. "Hello," I said, feeling stupid the second the word left my mouth. The wall answered with one knock. I stepped back. The next morning, I saw Victor in the hallway carrying a trash bag. "Hey," I said, "can you hear me through the wall?" He looked at me for a second too long. "Depends," he said. "Why?" "I heard knocking last night." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. "Pipes," he said. It sounded like someone knocking. Pipes can sound human. I didn't like that answer, but I told myself he was probably right. Old building, old walls, old pipes. Adults are very good at explaining away the thing they're scared of. The knocks kept happening, always late, always from the same wall. Sometimes 3 knocks, sometimes 2. Once, I woke up to 5 fast knocks and sat upright in bed with my heart pounding. I started recording them on my phone, but whenever I hit record, they stopped. That made me feel stupid and paranoid. Then things started moving. Small things at first. My keys were on the counter when I went to bed, then on the floor when I woke up. A cabinet door I knew I closed would be hanging open. My bedroom light would be on when I came home from work. I blamed myself. I was tired. I worked nights. I had a weird schedule. People forget things. Then I found the note. It was folded once and placed under my front door from inside the apartment. Not outside. Inside. A torn piece of notebook paper. 2 words written in shaky pencil. "He lies." I stood there staring at it until my eyes started watering from not blinking. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I called Mr. Bell. He sounded annoyed before I even finished explaining. "Adam, you're probably exhausted," he said. "That unit has a history of people getting dramatic." "What does that mean?" "It means don't start trouble with Victor. He's been there 15 years. Good tenant." That was when I realized Victor had already prepared him. The next time I saw Victor, he was standing outside my door. Not knocking, just standing there. I opened it because I thought he might have heard me moving around. He smiled. "Everything okay?" "Why wouldn't it be?" He looked past me into the apartment. "You tell me." I wanted to close the door, but something about him made me hesitate. He pointed at the scratches around my lock. "Previous tenant made those," he said. "Tried to say someone was inside with him." My skin prickled. "Was someone?" Victor laughed softly. People hear things when they're lonely. That night, the knocking changed. It didn't come from the wall behind the TV. It came from my bedroom closet. I was in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. From inside the closet. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of movement from the closet made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I grabbed the only weapon I had, a metal flashlight, and opened the closet door. Nothing. Just jackets, shoes, a laundry basket. Then I noticed the back wall. It didn't line up right. The closet looked shallower than it should have been. I had seen the outside of the building. I knew roughly where my apartment ended. That wall should have had more space behind it. I knocked on it. Hollow. Very hollow. The next day, instead of sleeping, I borrowed a stud finder from a coworker and checked the closet wall. There was framing where there shouldn't have been framing. Newer drywall. Badly painted. I called Mr. Bell again and told him I thought there was a false wall in my closet. He got quiet. Then he said, "Do not damage the unit." Not, "That's impossible." Not, "I'll come check." Do not damage the unit. That told me enough. I waited until night, when the building was quiet. I pushed my bed against the bedroom door, set my phone to record, and used a small utility knife to cut into the closet wall. The first piece came away in a powdery chunk. Behind it was darkness. Then a smell rolled out. Stale air. Sweat. Dust. Something sour, like old clothes left wet too long. I held my flashlight up to the hole. At first, I saw nothing. Then an eye opened on the other side. I fell backward so hard I hit my head on the bed frame. A voice whispered through the wall. "Don't call him." It was a woman's voice. Weak. Dry. Real. I started tearing at the drywall with my hands. "Are you hurt?" I whispered. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "He said no one would believe me." I called 911. While I was on the phone, someone started pounding on my apartment door. Victor's voice came from the hallway. "Adam, open up." I didn't move. He knocked harder. "Adam," Mr. Bell called me. "You're confused. Open the door." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The dispatcher kept asking if I was safe. I said, "No. No, I don't think I am." Victor's voice changed. "Lower now. You don't know what she is," he said through the door. "She was sick. I kept her safe." The woman behind the wall started crying. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled to drag the dresser in front of the bedroom door. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Victor hit the front door so hard the frame shook. Then I heard keys. He had keys. Of course he had keys. The front door opened. The scratches around the lock suddenly made perfect sense. I backed into the bedroom and pushed against the dresser with my whole body as Victor came down the hall. "Adam," he called, "you're making yourself look unstable." That word, unstable, the same word Mr. Bell used. The same word Victor used for the previous tenant. The bedroom doorknob turned. The dresser shifted. I screamed at the dispatcher to send someone faster. Victor shoved the door again. Behind me, the woman whispered, "Closet." I looked back. Through the hole, I saw her hand reaching out. Thin fingers, dirty nails, a silver ring on her thumb. She pushed something through the opening. A phone, old, cracked, but charged. On the screen was a video already open. I pressed play. It showed Victor building the false wall. Victor carrying grocery bags into the hidden space. Victor standing in my apartment before I moved in, looking straight into the camera and saying, "The next one will listen." The bedroom door burst open. I don't remember thinking after that. I threw the phone through my window. The glass shattered, and the phone landed on the pavement below, still playing loud enough for the neighbor downstairs to hear Victor's voice. Then I screamed. Not words, just noise. Victor froze. A light turned on in the building across the alley. Then another. Someone shouted, "What's going on?" Victor looked at the broken window, then at me, and for the first time, his calm little smile disappeared. Police arrived within minutes. He tried to tell them I was having a breakdown. He told them the woman behind the wall was his sister, then his girlfriend, then someone he was helping. None of it held together. They broke down the closet wall and pulled her out. Her name was Elise. She had been the previous tenant. She hadn't moved out. Victor had told everyone she left after a mental health episode. Mr. Bell believed him because Victor paid the rent on time and caused no trouble. Or maybe he knew more than he admitted. I still don't know. Elise survived. I won't go into every detail of what happened to her, because it isn't my story to tell. But I will say this, she was not unstable. She had been trying to warn people for months. The knocks were not pipes. They were her. I moved out that same week. I didn't even take all my furniture. I just left what I couldn't carry. Mr. Bell later claimed he had no idea, but the police found texts between him and Victor about keeping 2A quiet. So I'll let you decide what that means. Victor went to prison. Not long enough, in my opinion. Elise moved away and changed her name. I only know that because a detective told me she was safe. As for me, I still live alone, but never in old buildings. I check closets. I measure walls. I look for scratches near locks. I don't care how paranoid it makes me seem. Because even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying Victor's face in that hallway. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Sometimes the most terrifying thing in an apartment isn't the stranger outside your door. It's the person next door who knows exactly how thin the walls are, and exactly how easy it is to make the truth sound like madness. Story 9. The first thing I noticed about the delivery driver was that he didn't look at the package. He looked at the windows, not in a casual way either. Not like someone checking the house number or trying to see if anybody was home. He looked at our living room window, then the kitchen window, then the narrow bathroom window on the side of the house. His eyes moved across them like he already knew what was behind them. That was when I understood what my neighbor had been doing the night before. My name is Lily. I was 17 when this happened, living with my mom in a quiet neighborhood outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It was the kind of place where people waved from driveways, kids left bikes on lawns, and everyone knew which houses gave out the best candy on Halloween. Nothing ever happened there. At least, that's what we all like to think. My mom worked as a nurse, and that year she had started picking up overnight shifts at the hospital. I hated when she worked nights, but I was old enough to stay alone, and our street felt safe. We had a doorbell camera, motion lights, a dog that barked at leaves, and neighbors on both sides. One of those neighbors was Mr. Bell. He lived 2 houses down in a small blue ranch-style home with white shutters and a perfectly cut lawn. He was probably in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. Friendly, quiet, the kind of neighbor adults trusted immediately. He wore clean button-up shirts, brought in people's trash cans when they forgot, and always said hello without being pushy. My mom liked him. Everyone did. "He's harmless," she said once. "Just lonely." That was the word adults always used when they didn't want to admit someone made them uncomfortable. Lonely. The first knock came around 7:40 on a Thursday night. I was in the living room watching a show with the volume low, wrapped in a blanket with our dog, Milo, sleeping beside my feet. Outside, it was cold and windy, the kind of night where the trees scrape against the siding and make the whole house sound older than it is. When the doorbell rang, Milo lifted his head and barked once. I checked the camera on my phone. It was Mr. Bell. He stood on the porch holding an empty measuring cup, smiling politely into the lens. I almost didn't answer, but then I felt stupid. He was our neighbor. He knew my mom. He'd helped us shovel snow the winter before. So I opened the door but left the chain lock on. "Hi Lily," he said. "Sorry to bother you. I'm baking and realized I'm out of sugar. Any chance I could borrow a cup?" His voice was normal, warm, not creepy at all. "Yeah, 1 second." I closed the door, went to the kitchen, and got the sugar bag from the pantry. When I came back, he was leaning slightly to one side, looking past me into the hallway. Not obviously, just enough. I held the bag through the gap. "You can keep it," I said. "We have extra." He smiled. "That's kind of you." but he didn't take it. Instead, he glanced over my shoulder and said, "Your mom working tonight?" I paused. "Yeah. Hospital?" I nodded slowly. "Hard job," he said. "She's a good woman." I didn't know what to say to that. After a second, he stepped back and said, "Actually, don't worry about the sugar. I found some in the cabinet before I came over. Old age, you know, forgetting things." He laughed softly. Then he left. I closed the door and stood there holding the sugar bag. That should have been the moment I called my mom, but it felt too small, too weird to explain without sounding dramatic. A neighbor asked for sugar and forgot to take it. That was all. I told myself it was nothing. The second knock came 20 minutes later. Milo barked harder this time. I checked the camera again. Mr. Bell was back. This time, he held a flashlight. I didn't open the door all the way, just enough to speak through the chain. "Everything okay?" He looked embarrassed. "Sorry again. My power flickered, and I think I blew a fuse. Do you happen to have spare batteries? Just AA if you have them." I frowned. "For the flashlight?" He held it up. "This one's almost dead." I said I'd check. Our batteries were in the junk drawer near the back door. To get them, I had to walk through the kitchen. As I did, I noticed him watching from the porch camera feed on my phone, still visible in my hand. His head tilted slightly toward the kitchen window, like he was listening to where I went. I grabbed 2 batteries and came back. Again, he didn't take them right away. His eyes flicked past me, this time toward the staircase. "You have bedrooms upstairs, right?" he asked. My stomach tightened. "What?" He smiled quickly. "Sorry, I just remembered your mom mentioning a roof leak once. Thought maybe the upstairs lights were affected too." "No, everything's fine." He nodded. "Good, good." Then he stepped back again. "You know what? I think I have batteries in my garage. Sorry to waste your time." He left without taking them. That was when I locked the deadbolt. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. I texted my mom. "Mr. Bell keeps coming over asking for random stuff, then leaving without taking it." She replied a few minutes later. "That's odd. Don't open the door again. I'll call during break." That helped a little. For about 10 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hi Lily. Sorry if I made you nervous. Just neighborly things. Your mother trusts me." I stared at the message until my hands went cold. I had never given Mr. Bell my number. The third knock came at 8:31. This time, he didn't ring the bell. He knocked on the side door, the one near the kitchen. Milo went crazy. He jumped off the couch and ran barking toward the back of the house, nails clicking against the hardwood. I froze. The side door was rarely used. Delivery people didn't go there. Friends didn't go there. Even my mom used the front. I opened the camera app, but the side door had no camera. Another knock. Soft. Patient. "Lily?" Mr. Bell called. "I saw your kitchen light flicker. Do you need me to check the breaker?" His voice came through the door like he was standing too close to it. I didn't answer. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I texted my mom again. "He is at the side door." She called immediately. I answered in a whisper. "Do not open it," she said. Her voice had changed. Nurse calm but scared underneath. "Go upstairs. Lock yourself in my room. Take Milo. What if he doesn't leave? I'm calling Mrs. Patel next door. Then I'm calling the police if he stays." I grabbed Milo's collar and pulled him upstairs. I felt ridiculous and terrified at the same time, like part of my brain still wanted to say, "It's just Mr. Bell." From my mom's bedroom window, I could see part of the side yard. Mr. Bell stood near the kitchen window. He wasn't knocking anymore. He was writing something down, not on his phone, on a small folded piece of paper. I stopped breathing. He looked at the window, then at the back gate, then down at the paper again. Mapping. That was the word that came into my head. He was mapping the house. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from downstairs made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The sound had come from inside. One step, then another. Milo growled low in his throat. I locked my mom's bedroom door and backed away from it. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Front door is safest. Go there. I almost dropped the phone. A second later, someone knocked on my mom's bedroom door. 3 light taps. Not loud, not rushed. Tap, tap, tap. I covered my mouth with both hands. My mom was still on the call, saying my name, asking what was happening, but I couldn't answer. Then Mrs. Patel's porch light snapped on next door. I saw it through the window. A car door slammed outside. Mr. Bell's shape moved away from the side yard. The footsteps downstairs retreated. By the time police arrived, he was gone. They checked the doors and windows. Nothing was broken. The side door was locked. The front door was locked. The back door was locked. But the basement window was open. Just a crack. Enough for cold air to leak in. Enough for someone to reach the latch. The officers spoke to Mr. Bell at his house. He told them he had come by for sugar, then batteries, then noticed our lights flickering and got concerned. He said he texted me because my mom had given him my number for emergencies. My mom said she hadn't. He apologized, said he must have mixed me up with another neighbor. The police gave him a warning and told my mom to call again if he came back. That was it. No arrest. No search. Just a warning. I didn't sleep that night. My mom came home early, and we sat in the living room with every light on until morning. Milo stayed pressed against my leg the whole time. The next day, around noon, a delivery van pulled up. I was still home from school because my mom didn't want to leave me alone. She was in the shower when the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. A man in a brown jacket stood on the porch holding a medium-sized box. He wasn't wearing a company uniform. No visible logo. No handheld scanner. Just a box. He rang again. Then he looked directly at the camera and smiled. "Delivery for Lily," he said. I hadn't ordered anything. Behind him, across the street, Mr. Bell sat in his parked car. Watching, I backed away from the door. The delivery man tried the handle. Not hard. Just a quick test. Like he already knew the lock. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I screamed for my mom. The man at the door stopped smiling. Then he stepped to the side and looked toward the kitchen window. The same window Mr. Bell had studied the night before. My mom came running down the hall in a towel, grabbed her phone, and called 911. The delivery man left before police arrived, walking fast but not running. Mr. Bell's car was gone too. This time, the police searched Mr. Bell's house. They found the folded paper in his kitchen trash. A rough drawing of our house. Front door, kitchen window, side door, basement window, stairs. My bedroom marked with an X, even though he had never been upstairs in our house. Beside the drawing were notes. Mother works nights. Dog loud but small. Girl answers chain lock. No camera side door. Delivery works better daytime. They also found text messages between Mr. Bell and a prepaid phone. The messages weren't detailed, at least not the parts we were told about, but they were enough. Enough to prove he wasn't just a lonely neighbor. Enough to prove the delivery driver wasn't a delivery driver. Mr. Bell was arrested that afternoon. The other man was caught 2 weeks later in another town after trying something similar at a different house. Even after escaping, even with the safety of police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the camera. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I'm 21 now. I don't answer the door unless I know exactly who's there. I don't care if they're friendly. I don't care if they're old. I don't care if they say they know my family. People think danger always announces itself loudly. It doesn't. Sometimes it knocks politely. Sometimes it asks for sugar. And sometimes the thing it wants was never in your kitchen. It was the layout of your home, the sound of your footsteps, the place you run when you're scared, and the one window nobody thought to put a camera on.